Hi friends! If you're new here, welcome. In this video, I'm going to be making some vintage-inspired linen shorts for summer out of the same pink linen that I made my last sewing project out of, which was a vintage-inspired skirt. I will link that right over here. That one was a tutorial though, so this will not be a tutorial. I mean, you'll see. Definitely not a tutorial, but there's some guidance in this video. But yeah, so let's get into it. So first I tried to find some inspiration on Pinterest, and that was kind of mediocre. I didn't find exactly what I was looking for, so I ended up just kind of making something up. I went with a reverse pleat, so the pleat opening is facing towards the back, a single reverse pleat, and then some side pockets that are kind of not in the side seams, but I don't even know what those are called. What do you call this style of pockets? If you have a name for this, maybe let me know in the comments. But yeah, they have pockets and a turned up cuff, because I thought that was a cute little detail. The way that these shorts close is an invisible zipper in the back, which I pretty much just wanted it to be a clean design, and I didn't feel like doing a button front fly or anything, so that's what I went with. Don't have any regrets there yet. I started with a fitted shorts pattern that I know fits me, and I can't really recommend like a certain shorts pattern because fitting pants and fitting shorts is such an incredibly complicated thing, and every body is so different, and it's just like, if you think about a skirt, you only need basically a waist measurement, a hip measurement, and then like the distance between them, and then your full skirt length, and that's basically it. Whereas for pants, you have the crotch curve, you have the rise, you have the way that the way that the volume is distributed around bone structure and posture, and it's just, there's a lot there. So honestly, my best recommendation for getting a pants pattern that fits is to just start with anything, whether that is a commercial pattern, whether that's a pattern you drafted yourself based on a tutorial on YouTube, whether that's a pattern you pull from pants that you already have, and just make mock-ups and mock-ups and mock-ups until you get to something that fits you. My pattern is not perfect, but I do know it fits me pretty well, and I think I've made probably a total of like 7 or 8 versions of this pattern, but I wanted to make some changes to it. So I wanted to add a little bit of room in kind of the sides, and just to make the fit a little bit more loose and more relaxed. But then I also wanted to add some room in the front to change the front dart to be a pleat. And I wanted a little bit more fabric in the pleat, but then I also wanted more fabric kind of coming down there so that the pleat wouldn't immediately be pulled open and like stretched across kind of the hip area. So I decided to just go ahead and take my pattern and lay it out on the fabric and just draw something that was slightly bigger than the pattern, and it ended up working pretty well. I traced it out in chalk, and then I cut it out, and to cut out both sides, I just took my first pieces and flipped them over and cut them out. So then I also cut out 2 pocket pieces for each side. The pocket pieces are just kind of like the section where you want the pocket, the section of the pants where you want the pocket, and then you need another one that is the same but has like a little bit cut out. You'll kind of see how that works later. I'm not explaining it very well, but yeah, I cut out 4 pocket pieces, and then there was also a waistband that I ended up cutting later. So the first thing I did was fix my front pocket section area. So I took the cut off pocket pieces, laid them on top of my main front pieces, and sewed a diagonal line where the edge of the pocket is going to be. And I kind of messed this up at first, so I ended up sewing 2 lines on each of them, but the seam doesn't need to be pressed open, so it was fine. Then I pressed everything towards the pocket piece, and I edge stitched it, which is just sewing about a 1/16 of an inch away from the edge, including the lining, this is the pocket lining, and the seam allowance, and it just kind of helps to keep everything on the inside so the lining doesn't peek out. You'll notice that I do a lot of pressing in this project and you don't see any of it, and that's because I really wanted this to be a one-day make, and I knew that if I moved my camera from here over to my iron and back repeatedly, it would probably not end up being a one-day make. So yeah, pressing happens, just magically, poof, it's done. So then I took my back pocket piece. I feel like I'm being really inconsistent with how I refer to these, but I took my other pocket piece and I laid it behind the front and the lining pocket piece and pinned everything together, and then flipped it over and pinned the two pocket pieces together and then sewed around them. Yeah, that's what I did. Then I went in and I just basted all of those layers together to make sure that nothing was going to shift. And then I created my front pleats. To do that, I put my two front pieces together, right sides out actually, and then I did some tailor's tacks to mark how much fabric I wanted taken up in the pleat. And then I used the tailor's tacks to make sure that I had exactly the same marking on both sides. And if you would like an explanation and a tutorial for tailor's tacks, I will put that right over here. You can click on the little eye and it'll pop up. But yeah, so then I basted my pleat on both sides just to make sure. I wasn't sure yet if I was gonna sew down the pleat or just have it pleated in the waistband and then open, but I basted it so I would have options. Then I moved on to my back pieces and I did pretty much the same method to mark out the dart. Instead of transferring the dart from my pattern, I decided to change it a little bit and change the angle of the dart to go slightly more out from the waist versus being vertical, which is just kind of a personal preference on fit and the way that the style lines look. But yeah, I just redrew a dart line, drew a dart, and then did some tailor's tacks, cut the tailor's tacks, and created my dart. So then I did my side seams. I just laid one front piece and one back piece together, right sides together, and sewed down the side. Then I did the front and back crotch seams. So I just took those two, the front and the back, sewn together, and the other front and the back, laid them together, and then you have the two fronts with your crotch seam and the two backs with your crotch seam, and I just sewed both of those. The back one is going to have an invisible zipper, so I did a super long basting stitch for most of it and then sewed just the very end. I will say it's kind of standard practice to do 2 or 3 lines of stitching on a crotch curve just because no one wants their crotch curve to split. So then I pinned and sewed my inseam. I just kind of took a pin to line up the two crotch seams and then just clipped on either side from there and just sewed it and pressed it open. So then I went ahead and sewed on an invisible zipper, and I didn't have an invisible zipper that was a perfect match, so I'm using this red one. And this is not an invisible zipper installation tutorial. There are plenty of those out there if you search YouTube for them. But it just kind of open the zipper, press the zipper teeth away, line the zipper up, sew next to it with your zipper foot, and do the other side, make sure they're the same length, and then finish that seam below the zipper. And cut your zipper off if it's too long, which mine is. But yeah, then we have a zipper. Oh, you know what I did before that? I added a waistband. I cut out a waistband and I added it because I realized that I wanted the zipper to start at the waistband. Yeah. The waistband is just a strip that I sewed right sides together to the top edge. I think I stay stitched the top edge of the shorts first. And then the zipper was installed, and then I finished the waistband as I normally do, fold the edges under and hand finish it. To close the very top of the waistband, I added a hook and eye, and I have run out of size, I think it's size 2 hooks and eyes? I've run out of like my standard size hooks and eyes, which is very sad, so I'm using one that's a little bit bigger than I would probably want to use, ideally, but the other option was like a teeny tiny one, and I thought that would maybe be worse, so yeah. I sewed on a hook and eye with some cotton embroidery floss. Then I tried to even out the hem, which was a little bit tricky because I was kind of struggling with how to like lay this out, but eventually I figured it out and I cut it off relatively evenly, and then I created a really wide hem, and this is because I want to do that turned up cuff. So to do the hem, I turned the edge under around 3/8 of an inch, kind of give or take, and then I turned it up a whole 1.5 inches. Then I pressed it and turned it up about 1 inch which means that the edge that you're seeing is part of the hem, and the actual seam of the hem is getting covered by the fabric itself. And at your side seams and at your inseam, you don't have awkward raw edges or whatever kind of seam finish that you already did. It's the outside seam finish because that hem was so wide. The last thing that I did was some hand finishing. So I decided to do hand finishing to tack up my cuff. There are a few ways to do this. Some people will just go in and do like a stitch in the ditch on the outseam and the inseam, which is definitely an option, but I wanted to go in and do something a little bit decorative, so I took some embroidery floss and I just sewed a little X. I think this was like 4 strands of embroidery floss, so it's pretty thick, and I just sewed a little X on the outside of the cuff, and then on the inside I just did a single line, and yeah. Oh, then I decided to embroider the front pleats down about, I think it was like 5.5 centimeters. So I went in and I did 4 little kind of satin stitches, relatively messy satin stitches, and then I decided to do a decorative running stitch going up the length of the pleat. And I mean, it's not completely decorative, it does have a little bit of a function, it helps that from not kind of pulling open, but I could have done that in a way that was less obvious. These shorts are done and I am so happy about them. If you're still watching, I have a little secret for you. I'm working on a vintage blouse PDF pattern, which is currently on my dress form right here. You can't really see it, but hopefully that'll be launched in like a month. So I'm super excited about that. Stay tuned, and I will see you next time. Also, thank you to my coffee supporters. I have goldfish. Bye.